Hi, Charles Moman here. Well, this video will show you how to install some extra LED taillights to your Runaway camper or any camper. Thanks for watching. Well, last week I was down in Summerville, Florida for the third annual Runaway Camper Homecoming Rally. And I decided to do a couple of things at the rally to help other Runaway owners. And so one of the things I did was organize a seminar about solar and portable power. And you can see those three videos on this channel. Another thing I decided to do was do a demo of an install of extra taillight LED lights on a Runaway. And I did that on my original camper in 2016. Actually, my son-in-law and his father did the work for me. And then recently, my wife and I moved up to the 6x8 2020 Range Runner, the new fiberglass composite model. And so I decided to go even bigger on that one. So I added, instead of 12-inch, I added 2 on each side in the corners like this of 20-inch LEDs. And I told people about them, and people are asking, so I decided, well, I'm going to offer to pay for someone's install. And so that's what I did. I bought the lights and everything that are needed and told everyone I would be doing this at the rally. Then I started to get some messages from people saying, well, could you do it for me? So I almost got in over my head. I went down to the rally and I had 11 people that wanted to have the install done. But fortunately, 3 other people came to my rescue and kind of joined my team. I did the first one completely by myself, and then I had Dan join me, and then David, and then Jim. And so we ended up becoming a well-oiled machine, each with our own specific tasks. And so I took pictures and did some video, and you're going to see that right now. And we had some variations on how we did it, but I think you'll find that this is actually a pretty easy install. I have to tell you, I'm really missing that summer weather that I had down in Florida last week. I think the rain is already starting to turn into snow here, but I just wanted to say another word or two about this install. This all began in 2016 when my wife and I went down to Ocala and picked up our 2016 Navigator, our 4x8. That was the first time I'd ever towed anything, so I felt very insecure driving home. And so when I got back, I talked to my son-in-law and said, hey, why don't we add some extra LED lights? And that's what we did. And they were the 12 inchers, and I just had one on each side like this. And it immediately made me feel safer. And I knew that when I moved up, and we did not too many months ago, up to this new 6x8, this is the 2020 new fiberglass composite Range Runner, I knew that I wanted to do the lights again, but I decided to go big. So this time I did 2 20-inchers on either side, and I am seeing real well. And so that's how this all began. What Runaway does is totally street legal, and it's what you'll see with most trailers, camper trailers like this. The taillights, they work just fine. But I just wanted a little more protection. And just to let you know, I heard from one of the people that we did an install on, and they said they felt like as they drove through heavy traffic that the lights up higher made it easier for them to change lanes. And I know that's always a concern with a lot of people with a camper is getting over and will people see me. And so they felt like those more than 2 cars back, they could all see, and it just made it easier for them to move in and into that lane. And I also noticed when I was in traffic and in all kinds of weather coming back home, downpours and snow and ice and sunshine, I know for a fact that people could see me better. And you know, sometimes the water was coming up high with all the traffic, water coming off the tires. It was foggy, and so it's just a way for me to feel a bit safer. So that's how this all began. And I'm going inside. It is turning into snow. Let's go inside and I'll talk about the parts that you need and how to do this. Well, I'm back in my house now and you can't see it. I've got a pile here in front of me of all of the tools that I used and the parts that you need for this install. So let me show you them and then we'll get to the actual install. We really will. So you don't need a lot of tools to pull this off. I got my cordless drill and a bit for the screw and a small drill bit to do the pilot hole. Soldering iron and solder to old school solder, the connections. And some people use a flame to heat shrink the butt connectors and the wraps, but I use a heat gun. A wire stripper, and this one actually cuts wires too, but I also used these needle nose pliers that I have that can cut wire as well. A Screwdriver with a Phillips head on it would be handy as you're snugging in the screws into the camper through the lights. And then these are really heavy-duty scissors that I use to cut the wires and the Cordmate conduit. So I found these to be really, really handy. So there you have it. That's what you need. So what you're looking at here are all the items you need for this install except for a couple things. And I will show photos of those, and then I will hold up each of these items and then do a close-up of each and explain what we're using them for. So first we'll start with the LED lights, which I don't have right now. I've got a couple on order. And you can get a 12-inch version or a 20-inch, and we install both at the rally. And you can order those from Amazon or eTrailer, and I'll put some links down below. And they're great, and boy do they show up. Another item that you'll need is this Cordmate. It's made by Legrand. I found it at Home Depot, and the model number is C10. It's 5 foot, and you'll need 2 of these. You could possibly squeeze by with one if you do one of the 20-inch lights and position it down just a little farther from the corner. But for the most part, you'll need 2 of these. So next to the LED light, we run this Cordmate. It's got a sticky back on it, and it really does hold. Make sure you clean the surface with the alcohol, as I mentioned. And so this runs down to the bottom of the camper, and the wires are coming out of the middle of the light. And because they're coming from the back, it's not totally flat, but pretty close. So we feed them down this tube, and then to kind of tidy it up, we also use these elbows, and we would trim them off to get this closer to the light, but would kind of hide those wires and protect them. This is model C16. So these are ring terminals, and I use those to attach the ground wire to the back of the tail light. And so it's a ground wire, and I will show a close-up of this so you can see what model. So these are butt connectors, and the wires go in at each end, and you crimp them down and you heat them up, and they heat shrink so they get nice and tight. We also use these screws. These are 3/4 inch sheet metal screws, and they're a number 6, and they have a Phillips head on them. At least that's what I used. Though not really required, I got this 1/16 of an inch, it was a square about this big, and a 1/16 of an inch rubber gasket, and I just cut pieces like this to go right on the back of the light where the screw comes through. And so I would use silicone and then run the screw in. It just kind of made an extra seal on the hole. Speaking of keeping things sealed, I used 2 kinds of silicone. This is 100% silicone. I've got clear and white, and I ended up preferring the clear. It was just easier to work with, and it hides a multitude of sins. The white shows up everything. You have to really clean things up carefully. With the clear, you smooth it down and you just don't see it. So I prefer this clear. Then we decided to use this Loctite, and what we used the Loctite for was just to hold in that elbow because it can't be perfectly flat against the camper. So we put some Loctite in as well as some of the silicone just to hold it in there nice and tight. So let's talk about wiring. We used this kind of wiring for most of them. This is 4 bonded wire, 16/18 gauge, and so it's got 4 wires in it, and we only need 3. So I just peeled off, in this case, the green one. So I have these 3 wires, and we stripped them, and you'll be seeing how we did that. And this is just standard trailer wire. You could get at Walmart or any auto place or just about anywhere, and it works great. And the only thing is when it comes down the tube and goes underneath, I chose to use this black loom hollow flexible tubing to protect it. So you'll be seeing that, and I'll show you a picture right now of that. And that's just to protect it as it goes underneath, but its trailer wire should work that way anyway. Without it, be safe. And then for the first one I did, and maybe a couple of others, I used this. This is called strobe wiring, and I got it from my son-in-law. He and his father and uncle have a business wiring ambulances and police cars and school buses and things like that. And so they use this strobe wiring, and it's got a really heavy sheath on it. It's got 3 wires, works great. And when it comes down underneath, there's no need to use that black loom material because this is so heavy and protected. So either of these wires would work. You just have to make sure when you hook them up before you finalize them, double check, turn the car on and plug it in and make sure that you've got the turn signal working and the brakes and all that before you solder and get down to it. So to kind of tie things up underneath, I would loop the wire, any extra, And whenever I could, wherever there was a place I could do it, I used different cable tie sizes to hold them up. And then if need be, I even used some duct tape just to hold it up underneath the frame of the camper if I had some extra, and that should hold for a long time too. So that pretty well covers what you need for this installation. Two more things. I definitely use electrical tape. And when I would solder connections, then I would let them cool down and I would wrap them with electrical tape, and just to make sure that they're solid and to protect them. And then when Jim did his soldering, he would use these heat shrink tubes, and they make them in all different sizes, but he would have it slid over the wire, then bring them together, solder them, bring the tube over, and then heat shrink it. So if I used these, I would have probably have still done the electrical tape. That's just me. Well, that was about 10 minutes of preliminary information, but I wanted to show you the parts and the tools and just talk about the process in general. So you're now about to see 2 installs. I'm actually going to use photos from 3. You're going to see Dan in this first install that we did at the rally, and we just spent a lot of time just thinking it through because we knew we had many more to go. And so I was taking pictures, but I'm going to supplement that first install with some photos of when my son-in-law and his father were installing on my camper. Now keep in mind, you're going to see in some of those shots, you're going to see a horizontal LED light and then a vertical. And so that's how I had it done on my camper. We did not do that at the rally. We just had all vertical ones. But you'll see some close-ups of doing some of the same tasks that Dan did that I may not have a photo of. So I'm going to sort of go back and forth. And then the second complete install will be my friend Jim. And he did it was the last install we did. And he did it all, and I was able to shoot a lot of video. So you'll see a lot of him doing the whole process. So here we go. So when you're installing the shorter LED, these are the 20s. When you're installing the shorter one, I've already mentioned this little piece of rubber gasket. And so what I did was I went ahead and drilled a hole. I put the screw through the light, through the hole, and I run the screw through this, and it's got silicone on it, so that when I push it in and I screw it in, it's got a good seal aside from the silicone that we put on it. If you get one of the 20-inchers, I'd forgotten they've got a really nice rubber gasket on it, and so you won't need to mess with that extra red rubber gasket that I showed you. So this will take care of that when you're putting this on. And I really like these 20-inchers, but the 12 inches are great as well. here we have a piece of the white wire that's our ground, and remember this is coming down the Cordmate from the tail light. We've already soldered at the top and run it down, and so this is coming down that tube, and we're heading it to the tail light, back of the tail light, and we want to attach with the ring terminal. So I'm just going to take my strippers and number 16 right there, strip it off, and I'm going to just twist it a teeny bit here, get my crimper ready, and I'm going to put this in here and crimp it. And I'm going to show you me taping it, and then I'm also going to show you using heat shrink. Some might like to do that as well. So if this was already connected, then if you're going to do that, you would want to have the heat shrink on it in advance. So we're going to slide that ahead. You don't really have to do this step. I didn't. I just used electrical tape, but I'm just going to feed this through, and I'm going to crimp it. And so now I've already got some tape ready here. I'm going to tape that on nice and tight. And there we go. I might put a little bit more on there, but you get the idea. So we're taping it, and right there, that could go on the taillight. But if somebody wanted to be even more sure, here's a piece of, and actually this is a little long. Let me trim this off. Doesn't need to be that long. And again, if you're going to do this, you would have already slid this over and put it across right there. And let me grab my heat gun. And it doesn't take long to shrink it down. We have a nice connection, so this will go in the back of the tail light, and that's probably not a bad idea to put the heat shrink on there. So there you go, how you would attach that to the back of the tail light. Okay, so let's talk about what are you going to see when you get under the camper. So imagine you're in you're underneath the camper, and you're not that far from the taillights. The taillights are right over here, and you look under and you see the wires coming from the front, and they're coming with wires that lead to your connector that will plug into your vehicle to send power and to let the lights know whether you're asking for a tail light or brake light or turn light, whatever. Okay, so that's what this is going to. So we're going to our vehicle there. And so you'll see these wires coming, and these wires here are coming from the taillight. So we're talking original installation. And so these will be more than likely have butt connectors, splices. They'll be crimped, and more than likely they'll be wrapped with black tape. And that's what you'll see. And you also see the white ground wire coming along, and it's going to bypass this and go straight into the taillight. And so we saw a couple of different kinds of taillights. I may have already mentioned that, where this might go directly into the taillight, or it may go to the back of it and attach to a screw with a nut. So either way, this is going to the taillight. So I'm going to get this out of the way so we're not dealing with that. When you get under there, you now have to get power. Let's imagine this is coming from the Cordmate. It's coming out of the Cordmate. It's going up to the taillight. And I saved myself on the phone this, so I already knew from the manufacturer what the white, black, and red wires coming out of the LED light, what they did. So then I connected them. I just made sure I knew what colors I connected them to, because I didn't have red, black, and white. These are different colors. So I just made note of what I attached to each of the colors. It comes down the tube and it comes around this way. The white that's coming from the taillight isn't coming this way. It's already going to the back of the taillight. So we have the ground coming from the front. It's going directly to the taillight, and the white wire coming from the new LED light down that tube, the Cordmate, is going to the taillight. So what we need to do is we need to get power now to the new lights. So this is already set up. It's already going. So what I did was I cut it, And so now I got rid of these and the tape, and so hopefully you'll have enough spare that you could, if you need to, you could cut it and strip them and get cleaner ends on there. We had one camper where they had rewired it and they pulled it so tight that when I cut it, I actually had to put a splice in before I could do what I'm about to show you now. So what do we need to do? So now we need to get power to the new light and continue to get power to the old tail light. So okay, so now what we've got are these lights, these wires coming, and we're going to get new butt connectors. And what we're going to do is we're going to have match these colors and get them. These will get twisted in here and crimped. This one, so you'll have two coming on from this direction, from the tail lights, both the colors. Over here, we've just got one coming in to each end, like it was before. Okay, and so before you commit, even if you're positive, you experts out there, you already know for sure what color is which. Go ahead. But what I did was, because I wanted to be sure, so I didn't have to do it again, I would twist these together, and then twist this yellow and this brown, or whatever color combination it is. Again, you may run into something different, and I did on the other side. And so I twist these wires together, and now I run a test. So I have my helper turn the ignition. I say, okay, I get out from underneath, and I'm looking up, turn to the left tail. Say I'm working on the left side. Give me the left tail light. Oh, good, it's working. Hit the brakes, hit the emergency, just turn the headlights on. Boom, we're done. If it didn't work, it shows me that something's wrong. One time it didn't work because the ground wasn't tight. But once you get going on this, it'll all make sense to you. But just test it by twisting the wires together, and you'll find out quickly whether it's either going to work or it won't. So let me get these connected, and then that should take care of showing you how to do the wiring underneath. Okay, I'm well aware that I'm taking a lot of time here, but I'm making the video that I would like to have seen before I did this, because I was very insecure doing this. So here we go. It's just another quick reminder. This is part of the original installation. It's going to the front of the camper where it plugs into your vehicle. It's sending power and information. It's telling the light, the tail light back here in the original tail light, that I'm braking or I want to turn, all that. And then here is the original installation. This was all connected with connectors and heat shrink and tape. And this is part of the original installation. Now we've got the wires coming in from the new taillight that we're adding up high on the back of the camper. And so we need to get these connected, so we're going to be matching these colors up and twisting them together. Remember, we've already tested, so we already know what's going to work. And again, I'm going to keep saying it, I know the colors can be different. You're going to twist them, test it, make sure it's right, then go for it. And so here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and start this, and I may speed this up as I go along here. So I'm going to feed this in. Get that shoved in there, and I'll crimp it. Okay. Now I'm going to get this one in, because it's only one wire coming from the front. Get that pushed in good. There we go. Get my crimper ready. And I'm sure there'll be some experts making comments about you should do this and you should do that. And I don't mind. You really can't hurt my feelings because I didn't know what I was doing, but I just sort of figured it out as I went. So now I'm going to take my brown wires. I'm just going to get myself a little more room here. I'm going to twist these together. And let's go ahead and get the yellow ones twisted while we're at it. And I'll tell you right now, when you're underneath, it seems like everything takes twice as long, that's for sure. So get these all twisted and ready. So let's do this yellow one first. And get that shoved in there. There we go. And the same with this. I'm actually going to trim off the end of that, just so probably a little too long, at least for me. And there we go. Push that in. Probably could have used a little bit larger. Nope, that worked. Okay, it's going in there. Okay. So now we've got everything connected, and so let me get a heat gun going here. Won't take much. There we go. Won't take long at all. So there we go. We've got that all connected, and some might leave it like that, but I'll be putting black tape on there. And there we go. And if you want to be all kinds of extreme, you could just tape over all of it. So now, just a summary here, we've got our power coming from the front, and now we are connected, and we are now sending power and signals to both the old tail light and the new LED tail light at the top. You've already tested it, and you are ready to go. So one more thing, you want to clean up your job. You don't want the wires hanging down. And so one thing I didn't mention is when you look at the original installation, down at this end, probably at the stabilizer jack, there's a hole at the top, and there probably is one or two small cable ties or big cable ties that have been cut, and it was holding it up. So I had to cut those to release the wires. So you'll just have to see what would work, what size. But I would cable tie that back up there, and if you can find another place, do that. And then I just use duct tape. If it was just a little lower than I wanted it, I would just tape it up to the metal chassis right there alongside the bottom of the camper, the floor, just to tidy it up, and so it's not going to snag anything. So once you do that, your installation is done, and you're going to feel much safer driving down the road. This is our 9th install, and we're actually going to try to squeeze in a 10th of these LED taillights here at the 2020 Homecoming Rally. And so my friend Jim, I'm going to use him as my guinea pig, and he's actually already done one install, and he's actually doing it a couple things differently than we did, but there are a lot of options, and so we're going to show you those options. And so he's soldered, and then now he's also adding in a heat shrink. And I did electrical tape, but that's even neater. And of course you need to have the heat shrink tube already on one end so you can slide it over. That makes it just a little easier. And you can use a heat gun, or you can just use a flame like this. A lot of guys. So Jim has just taken the Cordmate conduit and he's peeled off the backing, so he knows where he wants it. So it just sticks down, and you just really press hard. And he's got that all set. He's already got the wires soldered, so when he brings that light in, it's ready to shove down the tube and not be all awkward with the soldering like I was doing. Okay, so Jim is now running that 3-wire. It's sheath wire, and it's coming down. There it is, coming out. So he knows he's got enough to get underneath and do the wiring. He's got the light up here, and let me get up. So Jim, you've already pre-drilled, haven't you?
Yes.
correct? So he's already ready to go.
I drill a very small bit and then a larger bit just through the metal, so
Right.
the screw goes in easier.
And you can tell easily. You don't really worry about it. You can feel it when it gets through the metal. And then we go into the wood a little bit. We are not shy with the silicone, so we put it here, there, and everywhere. So he's putting in the hole, putting the hole down there. So now we've got the 3/4 inch screw. So he's just going to carefully run that in and not go crazy. And I can see, I don't know if it shows here, but I can see that silicone, and it will shove right into it. And there we go. And he'll come back and snug that up. And as you can see, the wires are sticking out a little bit because it can't be perfectly flat, but that's why we're going to use the Cordmate C16 elbows. The conduit is C10. He's now getting this one drilled in. And wow, this is so much easier having it all done over on a workbench or table. You bring it over and you're not fighting with everything. Just a great idea. I'm going to snug that up a little bit. And just like that, this is all done. Everything is done out here on the exterior. And now what's left is splicing some wire and stripping and connecting down there. So Jim just pulled the wire underneath, and he's got way more than he needs, which you want. It's easier to cut than you can add real well unless you do splices, and we don't want to do that. So he's seeing how far it's going to reach so that he can tag in. And we like to leave a little extra, so if we need to redo something, just you don't want to get it so tight. Maybe even an extra loop or whatever. Just don't go crazy with it. He's now going to cut the sheathing and get the wires free. And so right now Jim is getting the ground wire, the white, ready. He's already slid a heat shrink tube ahead of it. Remember, you need to think ahead and don't go too fast. And there he's now adding, and I'll show a close-up. He's now putting a spade connector on, and he'll crimp that on. So we're using the heat gun again, and I use electric tape. Oh, I like this better. Nice and neat, covering the bare wires. And of course this is going to be exposed to the weather because it's going to be in the back of this light. And every tail light's different. On some of the installs I did, the white wire was coming already outside and it was connected to the back of the tail light. In this particular model, where he is adding right now, the ground from the new light we're adding, the ground is apparently on the inside of that same bolt coming out, and so we know that because when he hooked it up, all was well. So you see now Jim is pulling out, and here's the wires that were done in the original stall, and you see they've got butt connectors and heat shrink, and so we need to get those connected to the new wires that are coming down that gray sheath wire right there. And so he's in my install, I literally cut those off and just did new ones. And what Jim is doing in this version, he's skinning in the middle. He's splitting the wire off in the middle and going to leave a bare wire, and he's going to connect there. So he's not going to have to cut them. Whatever works, whatever works. So he's got his stripper there. And he's already he's got a bare wire in that previous connection splice, and he's just going to twist that on there. So like I said, when I did it, I cut those ends off, and he's choosing to leave everything intact because we know it's good. And so he's going to solder that. So what are you going to do with that bare wire, Jim?
I have the electrical tape.
Okay. Yeah.
Up there.
Okay.
I'll wrap this with tape.
Yeah.
If I'd cut it, I would have put heat shrink on.
Right. Exactly. So now Jim is putting electrical tape over. Remember, he bared the wire in between the original connectors, and that makes it all solid. So he's now going to show you another option. He's cut the wire and he's twisting, and now he's sliding a heat shrink butt connector, right?
Yes.
Okay. Crimp it down. So on the alternative now, so he's got this one, he did put a heat shrink butt connector, so he's just getting them sealing on the ends. Be careful you don't burn yourself, and don't burn up the whole wire. Just watch it and you'll see it fold in on itself, and you know you've got it sealed in. So now what you want to do is you just want to get it all neat, and so what we use are just normal zip ties. We gather them together and we pull them up inside so they are up and out of the way. Just make sure you do check, maybe more than once, while you're doing this, before you do your final cinching up of everything, and because you don't want to have to go back because you connected the wrong wires. We have lights above and below now, and are you going to feel safer now, Jim?
Yes.
Absolutely. So I think it's one of the best $40 or less that you can spend for your safety in the fog and the rain. Daytime you'll be seen, and so I highly recommend that you do this. Love it. Thank you, Jim, for your help. Well, I hope you made it this far. I know that was a lot of detail, a lot of information, but you know, if you're wanting to install these LED lights on your Runaway or other camper, you probably would rather have too much information than not enough. So I don't really apologize for the length, and I hope you learned a lot, and good luck on wiring your LEDs to your camper. I know you'll feel a lot safer. And thanks for watching.